Retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General Rob Givens is an accomplished combat pilot with knowledge of the Korean Peninsula. Well, you may know him best from seeing him on our coverage of Thunder over Louisville. He has a warning for Americans tonight, and sat down and talked with our Chris Williams, who has the story.
He soared through the skies over South Korea. Just off his wingtip to the north was the enemy, a constant threat. Each time he strapped in, his rocket-powered flying machine hauled a lethal insurance policy.
And our mission was to deliver air power, up north if we ever needed to, deter them, but if necessary, go attack the north.
You flew over there. Were you ever prepared to go and drop live ordnance?
Every single day.
Now retired, Brigadier General Rob Givens watches from the sidelines, undecided on what our leaders should do next, wondering who will blink first and if that move will trigger an armed conflict.
This is something that I have tried to talk about to everybody that I could possibly talk to about it, because North Korea does present a real security threat to the United States. But we're at a point now where we as a people, as a country, have to come together and make a decision on what we intend to do. And essentially the argument is, do we take losses now to buy down the risk or mitigate the risk of taking much greater losses later? Or do we accept the risk of much greater losses later to not losing any life now?
He adds context to how small the room for error is by explaining that the capitals of the North and South are roughly the distance from Louisville to just east of Lexington. 25 million people live in the South's capital of Seoul, an area about the size of Jefferson County, where residents sleep in the crosshairs of 11,000 North Korean cannons, perched 35 miles away. He estimates the city could suffer 20,000 civilian casualties an hour.
Yes, we are really worried about the North Koreans shelling Seoul.
Some have said the U.S. could end a conflict with the North in, quote, 5 minutes. Givens corrects that assumption as misguided logic because reducing the North to smoldering ash with a nuclear warhead is the last thing anyone wants. His years of commanding a fighter wing on the peninsula leaves him to believe a war could be unlike anything the U.S. has seen since World War II, with hundreds of thousands of reservists needed for action, world economy suffering, and cyber attacks on the homeland. It's a much different reality of war than Americans have experienced since 9/11.
Really, unless you've got a friend or a family member in the military, you're somewhat distant from the war. No one will be distant from this war if we have to go to it.
Would you get back in if they needed you?
I would go tomorrow. And I don't say that lightly because, I've dropped an awful lot of bombs, I've flown a lot of combat missions, and as difficult as this is to admit, I've killed a lot of people, and I swore I really wouldn't do it again. But that's one that, if it was necessary, I would go tomorrow.
Chris Williams, WHAS 11 News.
And you can see the full conversation with Rob Givens by checking out Chris Williams' Facebook page, including the retired Brigadier General's response to those suggesting that the U.S. would end a war with North Korea in just 5 minutes. You can see that now all online.